right, right before we start to look at what the services are, let's look at the first question: is government even necessary? Because Fukuyama does address this question, and he talks about that the alternative is that the single largest competing option is to just let the market decide. So we should replace our worldview of democracy, capitalism, and humanism with just capitalism, so that that is the ruling, that the market will actually make all of the decisions. Fukuyama's response to that is that there are just some services that only the government can or will provide. It's important to note that this emphasis is on services and not goods. We are not talking about socialism. Socialism is about government providing goods and services. When we talked about democratic accountability, we talked about scorecarding, and we want to basically, what we want to do here is we want to define what services we do want to grade and what services we want to see how the government is delivering. So, what are the services that the government needs to provide? Regulating externalities, okay? A benefit or harm imposed on third parties. An example is an employer benefits from me paying for my own education and harm of downstream community from polluted water. The regulating externalities that Fukuyama points out are macroeconomic policies, regulating monopolies, managing imperfect information, regulating financial institutions, regulating insurance institutions, and managing hydraulic despotism. These are the areas in which, basically the capitalism would never have these on its radar screen. It just wouldn't, capitalism wouldn't pick them up. It wouldn't do anything about them. So they are outside of the boundaries of capitalism, and therefore they're something that actually has to be managed by some other organization, and in this case, who better than the government, or who other than the government, really is probably a better question. Other services that the government needs to provide are public goods. A public good is a good that my enjoyment of it does not prevent you from also enjoying it, and it cannot be privately appropriated and thereby depleted. Common areas are some of the good examples. The basic classic examples are clean air and national defense. The basic 5 big items that Fukuyama identifies under providing public goods are protecting clean air, protecting public health, providing public safety, providing a legal system, and providing the infrastructure. These are the areas that he talks about with regards to public goods that the government needs to provide. Then he talks about social regulation, where we want the citizens to be upstanding, law-abiding, educated, and patriotic. So there may be things we want to do with social regulation. We maybe want to encourage home ownership, may want to encourage small businesses, may want to help manage gender equality, may want to encourage physical exercise. There may be things we want to discourage. We may want to discourage cigarette smoking, discourage drug use, discourage abortion. These are social regulation issues. Now, the items that he identified in the book are basically providing education, protecting the environment, providing social insurance, protecting the poor, protecting property rights, and providing medical insurance. These are the 6 items that he feels felt under social regulation. The last thing he picks on as far as services is controlling elites. And he says that redistribution is a basic function of all social orders. And why is that? Why does he feel that way? And he said it is morally difficult to justify a minimalist state that provides no safety net whatsoever for its less fortunate citizens. That would only work where the playing field was always perfectly level, and where accidents of birth or simple luck had no role in determining life's chances, wealth, or opportunity. And that has never been a society in which that actually existed. The 4 items that he talks about with regards to controlling elites are wealth distribution and redistribution, overrepresentation of the elites in the democratic process or in the government process, industrial policies, and equal application of the law. These are the 4 areas that he addresses as services that the government should be providing in order to help control elites. So that's basically the summary of the services that he identified in his book with regards to what government should provide. But so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the other three dimensions of his framework. All right, we're going to look at economic growth, ideas of legitimacy, and social mobilization. And what does he mean by those? And basically what they are external forces that affect the political development process. So they're outside of our control in terms of being an external force, but they certainly are instrumental and have to be dealt with regards to our political development processes. The external forces of change that challenge the political order. Some of the examples for economic growth would be the rise of the middle class as a consumer class. So the middle class came out originally as a consumer class, and then from that, the request of the consumers and the taxed class to have a say in their history. If we're going to be consumers and we're going to be taxed, then we want to actually have a say in our history. And so that whole push from economic growth to the development of the middle class was another push towards democracy. Ideas and legitimacy, the selection of democracy itself over monarchy and the oligarchy, and capitalism over socialism. Basically, democracy was in essence tried last. Man tried monarchies first, they tried oligarchies second, and now we're basically down to democracies. And capitalism over socialism, and we'll talk about, but after 1989, there really is no alternative to capitalism. And then the rise of liberalism and the need to address individual human rights. Liberalism is all about the individual, and he talks about how liberalism and individual human rights, how that affects the democratic process. And finally, social mobilization, where he talks about the rise of new social classes, like professionals and teachers, things that had never been considered before, and how just having a new class, it doesn't have to be a class in terms of a caste system, such as you see in India, but a new class of people or of social organization has an effect upon the way that the democracy and the way that the systems will perform. Rise of new forms of identity, like nationalism and identity politics, where we find that people identify more with being the green than they are with being in any one particular party. So again, this whole identity politics issue is part of the social mobilization that is certainly affecting the political order. And then the increase in education for all citizens. All right, the increase in education for women, and it accelerated the society conversion to new ideas, because you had now another whole set of population that are now another whole set of the population that are now involved in what's going on. And then increase in participation of non-property owners, for example, women and slaves. The original development of democracy, if you look at the original setup of the Constitution, an awful lot of, it was done by property owners, and there are some structural issues in the Constitution that are basically organized around the idea of property owner, and there was a tremendous amount of debate about voters who should and could vote based upon the idea of property ownership, and women and slaves were excluded at the time. So one of the things that Huntington points out with regards to this social, economic, and ideas area, okay, these three, we talk about change and that they basically are constantly changing, but he says it's very critical. Now, this is Huntington says it's very critical that even though if they're changing as we're moving up, they can't be radically changing any one of them. So you can't have any one of them that is basically way out of whack with the other two in terms of change. They have to change in a lockstep fashion, similar to that's what the stool is. You can't start sawing the legs off of the stool, and you can't saw one leg off radically, and the stool will never stand. So the idea is that these changes, they certainly will occur and over time, but they really, you can't have any one of them being radical while the other two are more or less stable. And Fukuyama is in agreement with Huntington on that. He basically presents Huntington's position and then doesn't offer an alternative. So we're assuming that he's in lockstep with that. So now what we've done, okay, is we've covered the background of getting into the modeling, the political development processes, the models themselves, right? The state bureaucracy, the rule of law, and the democratic accountability, and the changing environment that changes and that affects the political process. So we basically built the whole model, Fukuyama's model, for political order. And so Fukuyama's complete analysis for political order, how we should do it, which we covered how we should do it, which is basically all the different processes, what needs to be provided, which we talked about in terms of services, and what kind of changes we need to consider. What are the big issues that are going to be affecting this as we move through time? So this is the end of the political orders video. The next one we'll talk about is actually the political decay. Thank you.